Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Fireside Chat with a retail expert I am so excited to introduce you to. I'm Caitlin Allen, the SVP of Market here at Simbe, and today it is my privilege to talk to Bob Hardister, who does not need any introduction. And our conversation is going to span everything about his background to how he got involved in robotics and store technology, how he was on the forefront of quantifying the value of some of those technologies within the store and the retail supply chain overall. And then we'll close out by talking about how important partnerships and integrations are within the ecosystem from a technology perspective, especially today, as well as why he joined the Simbe Strategic Advisory Board and what he's excited about as we look towards the future. So, Bob, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. Well, let's start with first things first. You've had an incredible retail career, leading everything from supply chain and IT at Schnucks and advising companies now. It's including Erewhon and 99 Ranch and many, many others. And I know you've done much more outside of retail, but looking back, what would you say shaped your approach to retail technology and innovation as a whole?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I started in retail about 10 and a half years ago. And before that, I was in banking and telecom. And Schnucks had gone through a credit card breach. And a mutual friend of mine who knew the Schnuck family was like, "Hey, there's an opening over at Schnucks." I said, "I'm not looking, but I'll talk with them," type of thing. And at the time, my kids were young. I was traveling a lot for work. They were playing a lot of sports and extracurricular activities. It was kind of time to maybe settle down a little bit, not be traveling so much. And when I started, they were like, "It's a pretty blank sheet of paper." And I was like, once I got there, I was like, "Well, they weren't kidding." And I'll tell you though, having again, especially I spent time at Mastercard and AT&T and Deutsche Bank and GE Capital. Um, Retail was the most fun I had in my career
Mm.
because, and I say it to people all the time, good, bad, or indifferent, your wife tells you, your parents tell you, your in-laws tell you, your relatives tell you, your neighbors tell you, your kids tell you. Um, and they, shopping for groceries, we do often multiple times a week. So your touch points are much greater in retail. And it was a really, really fun ride. And the approach to it was to take on, and Schnucks had a value system they called Comet. Anyway, each letter stood for something, but the T stood for try new things. And that was one of the things that we really excelled at, was being out on the front, not on bleeding edge, right? It's retail. It's not launching rocket ships. But being out front, working with key partners, being at a lot of tech shows, collaborating with other retailers, and looking at what's out there. And we also used to use the term a lot: innovate with intent, right?
Hmm.
So make sure you understand the business and the business problem, and then go find solutions that will help meet that need.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Putting structure to the white piece of paper,
Right.
which given someone with your ability to be creative is a gift to be able to do to those around you. Um, Maybe let's go back to the early days when you first met Jeff and Brad and Shaw. I imagine this was, early on in your exploration around the art of the possible at Schnucks.
Mhm.
It was also the very early days of our journey as a business 10 years ago or so. What stood out about their vision and what aligned with yours?
Yes, I remember. I think it was 20. Brad and I were just talking about this recently. I think it was 2016,
Okay.
FMI Midwinter in Chicago. And I remember seeing this robot traversing around a little makeshift store with shelving, and talked to Brad. And it was one of the technologies that, when you look at it, right, and it's not about that it's cool, it's robotics, right? It's about how can this help solve a business problem. And a major business problem that grocers have is making sure that they're in stock position on shelf. Can't be in stock in the back room, it's got to be on shelf. but that the product is in the right spot. The product's in stock, the product's in the right spot, the pricing is accurate. All of those things were a major problem for retailers. So I remember meeting Brad that first meeting, connected with him. There was a genuine, passion for what he was doing and enthusiasm, as well as a deep expertise within the robotic space that
Mhm.
led us to and those on my team, Dave Stack would probably remember the timeframes better than I, but I think about 3 years we did a kind of proof of technology. We had it in our lab and worked with it. Then we got it out into a few stores, and we expanded to 10 stores. And as you are aware, but everybody in the call may not be, Schnucks has robots now in every one of their stores. Although Schnucks did just acquire 51 more stores that should close next month.
Mhm.
So there's opportunity to expand Tally the robot and watch little kids and others love it the way they do in our stores.
Yeah, and they really do. That's well said. What, just out of curiosity, what gave you the confidence to be that first mover, Bob? In you just said this basically how much shoppers and store team members love having the robot around, and we hear from many customers that their families come to the store more often and stay longer and spend more money and time in the store when the robot is traversing. But that's looking back. That's rear view mirror, vision when with 2020, a 2020 lens. What gave you that confidence? And then have there been any defining or were there any defining moments along the way where you realized like, whoa, this is a really big deal. It's going to change everything.
Yeah, I would say, early on, and again, if you think about 3 years in a lab, that's a long time, right? That's a lot of patience. Um, but it was about that vision of what we wanted to accomplish and what we wanted to do. And, we looked at some of the competitors, and back then there were other providers that had solutions on handhelds. There's clearly still today, even and Simbe has a solution as well, but for the stationary devices that are taking inventory levels and looking at shelf conditions. But yeah, I think what we looked at was, and I'll be honest too, our team got really excited. One of the things that you'll find when you are innovating with intent,
Hmm.
or you're working for a company like Simbe, where you've got a vision and a mission, is people get really excited. They want to work on newer things. They want to try new things. They want to have the freedom. And again, we used to say failing's fine, just fail fast and fail forward. Um,
I love that.
so that type of approach, I think, is what allowed us to stick with Simbe,
Hmm.
and what allowed us to get it into 10 stores, and eventually we were. It was also a very strong partnership with store operations. So Dave Stack, who I talked about, and Kim Anderson spent a lot of time together. Caleb Holscher on Dave's team as well, making sure that the robot was doing what it needed to do. We were making sure that the accuracy was there. We were making sure that all the things that you needed to check the boxes on, because um, even when a technology is sound or really good or perfect, but there is no such thing as perfect. Um, the change management involved with introducing anything, right? Humans typically don't like change. So that change management, working with store operations, and I think the turning moment. I mean, I could probably point to accuracy on the robot or this and that, but honestly, when Kim Anderson started saying Tally as a teammate, um, that was kind of the defining moment, because it no longer was, I'll call it, an IT science project. It no longer was this proof of concept. It was now, this solution is something that the store and the store teammates see as a huge value in making their lives easier as well. And that's what it's all about, right? What you want to make sure of as a grocer, and what you want to make sure of then as a technology organization supporting a grocer, or enabling a grocer is the term I should use. Um, you want to make sure that the teammates that are present are
Yeah.
able to service the customers in the best way they can. So if I can use a robot to traverse aisles and do these things, or if I can use ESLs to automatically change and do price tags, those are the things that can free up the teammates then to create a differentiated experience with the customer. And that's how
Yeah.
you can buy groceries anywhere. It's how you feel about the experience that makes you come back.
Exactly. And it is interesting sometimes how close of a connection these days there is between technology and specifically robots and the stores that are people's favorite stores in town. And it gets back to that question that you just brought up implicitly, which is answering what's in it for me.
Right.
Why would I want to go change how I do my job every day? It's really well said. And obviously, we're many years down into this relationship, but at this point, Bob, what do store teams and shoppers at Schnucks think about Tally as part of their day-to-day store experience?
Yeah, I think that the store teammates understand that it is taking um, a necessary step. And let's be truthful.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, they didn't have the time to get to taking store outs, right?
Sure.
Um, if you rewind pre-tally, Schnuck stores self-reported their outs, and if you think about that, what are you going to get in trouble for? You're going to get in trouble if your outs are high. So what do they self-report? They self-report low outs. That's basically just sticking your head in the sand, trying to make corporate basically not get on you for, not having proper store conditions. Um, so I would honestly say stores now do see the value in the robot in making sure that our stores are in good, excellent condition for our customers to shop. Um, and so that's the teammates, and then customers. um, I don't know that customers honestly fully understand it, right? I mean, they know that Tally's there to do inventory, but
Mhm.
like what difference that makes, I think you're going to see that they're going to vote with their wallet and where they spend their money.
Yeah.
And we do know that, by reducing outs, if you think about an out of stock, right? Oftentimes a customer, if I'm out of a product, you can get a different size. If I'm out of that brand, you can get a different brand.
Yes.
Um, but if you have too many of those outs, then you're going to have a customer that's going to most likely not shop your stores anymore. So it's all this degree of friction um, that out on shelves cause. And clearly, with something like Simbe and Tally, you've got the ability to mitigate that as much as possible.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you're right that shoppers do vote with their wallets. I fell in love with a Schnucks grocery shopper a couple years ago. Her name's Glenda, and she goes to the main store there and the Depair store with her
Mhm.
grandkids almost every day to go visit the robot and get a donut. And it's like it's their ritual. And we recently got a video a couple weeks ago from the Schnucks team. They had hosted a birthday party about Tally for a 3-year-old who loves the
Yeah.
robot so much. So it's you said it really, really well there. Um, One of the things that differentiates Tally, as you know, Bob, is the human-centered design aspects. The fact that the robot has been made to appear cute and friendly, that it's made to appear unobtrusive, non-threatening, supportive of the human environment. What role do you think that's played in the way that it's been received by shoppers and store team members?
I do think it's a very, especially as a technologist, something that we may overlook, right? Because we think
Yep.
about the functionality of things. Um, but I will tell you, we had a competitor's robot in, the one that had the blinding bright light that basically you could be in the aisle when the robot was
Looks like
going
Darth
down.
Vader.
And then one that was bigger than me in terms of girth, which is big. So you do want something that is friendly, approachable, right? The little coup. I think it's made a major difference, and I think the way what speaks to that most to me is if Tally were threatening or imposing or scary, kids wouldn't flock to it. Kid,
Yes.
kids don't have filters, right? They love things or they don't. So clearly, whoever worked on the user experience side of Tally did a very, very good job. And that's probably an often, especially again for a technologist, often overlooked component, but it's been well received. And that was the biggest fear. And you guys
Hmm.
are probably well aware, but some of you may not be on the call, but Schnucks is a union operated store. So you've got an even higher hurdle rate in terms of the teammates, because the concern is this taking jobs away? The theory we had was no, because this will help us identify the outs, make sure we get product onto the shelf sooner, sell more products through for the customers, drive foot traffic, drive sales, which drives jobs. So,
Right.
but I think if you talk about the user experience, I would simply point to the kids and the fact that literally, as you know, I'm sure you see way more than I do, but kids run up and hug Tally and talk about how they love Tally, and as you said, Tally on their birthday cakes, and dress up like Tally for Halloween. Sorry, not Thanksgiving would be a bit odd, but Halloween would probably be more appropriate.
I mean, you never know, but I
Right.
agree. Halloween is probably more appropriate.
Probably more
And
appropriate.
it makes so much sense. On the side of value, Bob, I know that you all brought in a top consultancy at one point very early on to quantify Tally's ROI. And then I'm sure that beyond those numbers, there were other unexpected findings or learnings that you had over time. Can you walk us through some of what the most compelling findings were, as well as those other benefits?
Yeah, the biggest thing there was getting down to what does in stock truly do to drive incremental sales, right? So, and I talked about this a bit. Part of what we did with the consultancy was we looked at what was called a substitutability index, right? So Jif peanut butter may have a very high substitutability to Skippy, right? So if you were going for one, you may be fine with the other. Um,
Yeah.
so they brought a very data centric approach into looking at the transactional sales data,
Hmm.
understanding substitutability, understanding true incrementality, um, because not all, but a lot of this was predicated around making sure we had product on shelf to drive sales. And did we see sales lift? Did we see reductions in outs? Did we see customer loyalty improve through trips, right? So trips is really how you kind of measure the loyalty side of the house. Um, and again, and I won't go to the details. It is proprietary data to Schnucks,
Of
of the
course.
work that they did, but we saw good results across all those factors. And again, the other components that come into that are maybe not as hard tangible. They're real, but it's a little harder to measure. Um, you know, Tally clearly for Schnucks maps everything in the store to its exact location. So, you know, even before we had electronic shelf tags, right, ESLs, we were doing product mapping, product location data for helping Instacart shoppers find the product in the store, for helping teammates find the product in the store. They could scan a product and we would tell them exactly where that was if they were looking to stock. So, but funny aside, we during the holidays, the Schnucks administrative office team, we call it the support center,
Yeah.
they go out and work in the stores, and we either have to check, bag, stock, or one time they made us hang tags. That's how we got ESLs. Um, but I still remember stocking. I'm like, you guys, you have to put me in a Tally store. This was before we had it rolled out everywhere, because I'm like, I don't know where anything is. So the great thing, once you were in a Tally store, is I could simply scan the product and it would say, okay, dummy, that's in aisle 3, side A, section 4, shelf 2. And I'd be like, fantastic, now I can find that. So and then price accuracy, right? And just price descriptions, and then those types of things. ESLs now for Schnucks, it's a bit different. I mean, Tally does still audit the ESLs, but you've got much less of a chance of errors with the ESLs than you did with human labor. Funny story on the tags. We were out doing tags, and you talk about a horrible process. 4 to 5,000 price changes a week, and they hand you a stack of tags, and you try to find this. And I, go through, and I'm getting ready to be done, and went back to the department lead that was, telling us what to hang tags. I'm like, hey, I've got this stack left over. And they were like, did you look for him? I'm like, yeah. They're like, did you look at least 10 seconds? I'm like, yeah, I'm sure more. They're like, oh, there's a 10-second rule. If you can't find him, just throw him away. So the point in that, the point in that is that happens at every retailer, and that's extreme. And they were somewhat joking with me, I think. But what that tells you is the price integrity, the tag integrity is not there. Clearly, Tally can audit for those types of things. Tally can determine the location. Tally can determine the outs, as well as all the other great things that the Simbe team continues to work on for Tally and its core capabilities. But so it
Yeah.
went beyond just some of those factors. We did look at this, what did it do to improve efficiencies, knowing where product was. And again, on the pricing, you don't want to be doing price adjustments at the front end. You don't want customers upset that you're trying to cheat them. And you sure don't want regulators coming after you for pricing inaccuracies and finding you. So
All very true.
there's real components there as well.
Mm-hmm. Relatedly, you've always emphasized, Bob, the importance for technology to integrate into existing source systems
Mm-hmm.
to support the value you just talked about. And if you want to make this Schnuck specific or more kind of just hypothetical, that either way is fine. But where did you succeed in integrating Simbe into your tech stack, your application stack, and then where is there continued opportunity for progress in the industry as we think about inventory data and robotics underpinning a data-driven future for intelligent retail operations?
Yeah, you do have to. So two stories I'll tell you on that front with in terms of the data and making sure it's embedded. So
Mhm.
a couple things. First, I remember this was very early on when Tally's accuracy was improving, and right, we got excited when Tally got to 95% accuracy, and now I think it's 98 over.
Yeah.
But I remember going out to one of the, so this is kind of a wake up. The first one's kind of a wake up call and why you've got to have things integrated. Went out to one of the store managers. We were talking about the 95% accuracy and how great it was. And they were like, yeah, but I don't know what 5% you missed, so I have to count it all still. So the point was we had to make sure with Simbe, we kept working on clip strips and other types of
Yep.
fixtures and what we could do to improve the overall accuracy. But that did lead also to Schnucks building a statistical model to make sure we kind of served as a safety net underneath Tally. That if something were behind a pole, if something were behind a shipper or mod that sat in the aisle for a long time, that we looked to make sure that we could see that statistically we believe to a statistically significant level. I won't go into the measures we used. If an item was out, and we fed that
Yeah.
into the same back end of the Tally data. And part of what we built, we called it the brains. So we took all the data from Tally, and again, and we built this early on because it was not in place yet with Simbe, and I know Simbe's built
Hmm.
a lot of these components since. But we would take in the robot data, we would take in the statistical data. At one point, we had a view of taking in Instacart data, but we didn't trust the outs by their shoppers enough to use it to any means. But we would then take in the warehouse data. We would take in the ordering data, and we would look at what do we know is already on its way? What do we know has already been ordered? What do we know it won't matter because it's out at the warehouse? What do we think the perpetual inventory is above the reorder point? So what needs to be put on a backroom pull list or maybe moved from an end cap over to the shelf? So we created what we called the brains that kind of took all that data in and
Yeah.
allowed us to figure out, because here's another key, what was actionable by the store teammate. Because if you
Right.
just send them to every out every day, they're going to quit going to it, especially if it's out at the warehouse and there's nothing they can do. And that actionable percent, I won't get into exact numbers, but let's just say less than a third of all outs were actually actionable by the store. that was an important component to build trust with them, that we were making sure we weren't just sending them on a wild goose chase. We
Of
then
course.
we then found even within stores there were kind of two variants. You had a small percentage of stores that I would say were well staffed and able to keep up with all of their outs. They wanted to know every out as it occurred. So kind of think about just as almost in real time. We had other stores that said, we can't keep up. All you're doing is thrashing us. Can you tell us what are the most important aisles to work today? So we then built a model that looked at whether it was WIC, which is women, infant, and children, you need to be in stock on, whether it was an ad item, whether it was a high velocity item. So the various factors that we used in building this, but we basically built a prioritization by aisle for them to say, this is the most important aisle for you to work today for backstock. Or if it's not in backstock, update your PI so your system will get this ordered right away. So all of that is an important component. And one thing I would say for engineers, developers, and anybody at Simbe, kind of understanding that store process and how is your technology used and how does it aid, but also what ancillary, what other things could kind of easily be built that may take a lot of strain and stress off of a store operation. So living this stuff is extremely important and understand how it is integrated into a store's operation and workflow. Well,
Yeah.
we spent, and again I mentioned earlier, but Dave and Caleb on the Schnucks team spent a lot of time in stores, making sure that we were integrating Simbe the right way, so that we did get the credibility with the store first management, but then also with the store teammates. And again, like I said, Tally as a teammate is a you know name for a nickname for Tally that I don't take lightly, because that says a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about creating that empowering environment for sure. It may be a more macro question, Bob, but and you're working with regional grocers and national grocers today as well, but there's a need to compete every day with online giants, across every size of grocery store.
Right.
How do you see shelf intelligence empowering those players to level the playing field somewhat between themselves and online incumbents?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the online incumbent, and you think about, so if I go back to the days for Schnucks and e-commerce, right? So we started with Instacart. Uh, our catalog online was what we hoped was in stock and what we hoped was at that store. And you could say, what do you mean? Do you really not know what's at the store? Not in all cases. Planograms are a good start when you reset a section, and then they vary from that pretty greatly. So if you think about the fact that if a grocer can't be confident that all their products are represented online, you're selling yourself short
Mm-hmm.
right there to begin with. If you then think about, and what we had before we had Simbe, was we had movement rules where we said, all right, this is a fresh product. We haven't sold it in this many days. We're probably out of stock. This is a center store product. We haven't sold it in this many days. We're probably out of stock. So we
Yeah.
would mark it out of stock on the catalog. Whereas, your online grocers, they know everything that's in stock because everything is scanned or it's picked robotically as it goes in and out. So when you think about, kind of that commitment to the customer and them being able to know that what is on their list is going to be in your store. Um, if you fall short of that often, but they can go online to an Amazon and fill that order and know it's coming, and know it's coming in a known time frame for delivery. That is a major differentiator that the online players have. So, like I said, and what you want to make sure then as a brick and mortar, is that not only are your products in stock, not only is your full assortment online, but you've got the tools and the systems like a Simbe, like an ESLs, again, I think are two of the big ones that Schnucks major leap forward in terms of what they did for in-store technologies. But that free up those teammates to make sure they're creating a differentiated shopping experience. So to me, it still goes back to that, but you've got to meet the table stakes of your product is in stock, your product that they're looking for, they can find in your app, that it's not a ghost product that doesn't show up online, but they can find it in store. And
Right.
then they need to know how to navigate to and find that product so that it's not a treasure hunt in a bad
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Well, and a big part of keeping product on the shelf in the right place is also connected to the relationship between retailers and suppliers. And I know you care a lot about and have spoken to the importance of vendor compliance and accountability on both sides, right? The
Yes,
retailer and the
absolutely.
supplier side. What's the potential for Tally's data to change retailers' ability to work with both CPGs and vendor partners, then the value for the partners as well?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you look at, clearly Tally knows the shelf edge. But to your point, if you then knew things like the sales data, right? They're called the T logs, the transaction logs. If you also got data feeds for when is the next replenishment, when will it be here, what is the lead time, and whether that's DSD, which stands for direct store delivery. So think of your Frito-Lays, your Cokes, your Pepsis, right? They don't Retailers don't warehouse those items. Those come directly from the vendor through what's called, again, DSD. Um, but then you've got your warehouse items. But understanding all of that and being able to create a much more efficient and fact-based supply chain would go a long way for everyone.
Mhm.
The amount of money that CPGs spend on sending people into stores to validate the product is where it's supposed to be, that it's got the right number of facings, we're on the right shelf, right? Because you pay different amounts of money depending on where you're at. It's kind of like oceanfront real estate versus your inland. Um, so all of these things today are still a very inefficient supply chain that through tally and visualization, but then also enriched through core data from both, as you said, it's both from the retailer and the supplier. And it's not that the retailer is trying to beat up the supplier. It's because again, often the retailer doesn't know the status of their own inventory position. But creating better, more integrated, more fact-based data into that ecosystem will help all parties better service the customers and will also take waste out of the system.
Well said. Shifting gears as we round out the conversation, Bob, you did us the honor recently of joining the Simbe Strategic Advisory Board in an official capacity. And I am curious, fueling that decision, maybe shall we say, why do you believe that Simbe's become the industry leader over the last 10 years? And how does that support, or how did that support your decision to join us in that way, in an expanded capacity beyond your
Yeah.
relationship with us?
I think it's twofold, at least twofold. Let me hit the two, then I'll think if there's any others. But the product is superior to what is out there in the industry. It is proven, it works. So there's that. But the thing about product superiority is people can catch up with time and money.
Mhm.
The thing that I think that is more important. I often speak to when you're assessing vendors. If you get down to the top two or three in a solution, whatever it is you're looking for, right? So in this case, it'd be inventory robots, but it could be an ERP system for financials. Um, you can probably make any of them work. What you then have to look at and figure is, where do you think you've got the best cultural alignment? Where do you feel you've got the best relationship? Um, so much of today's world has become transactional, and
Mhm.
I'm just dealing in commodities. Um, so in that type of world, and even if you believe that, right? Because in some cases, it's not truly like, right? There's differences in the product, but the leadership, the vision, the customer support, the customer focus, um, those to me are what stand the test of time.
Yes.
Because when I don't want to pick a vendor, I want to pick a partner, especially when I'm making major investments in step function technology, not just continuing the same down a path. Um, and that's where I believe Brad and team do differentiate in that, both the vision and where they're looking to take the company, but also that customer focus, the customer feedback. There's the amount of meetings that my old team at Schnucks had with Simbe, going through roadmaps, going through problems, going through ideas, going through whatever it um, was unbelievable. And the support, and, things at times got a little bit contentious, on a topic here and there, but it was never about the relationship. Um, that is the key. And Simbe differentiates in that space. And because of that, because of differentiating the relationship and listen to the customer, that's why their products differentiated, right? And this is no knock to the people working with, the PhDs in robotics and computer visioning. Um, I go back to innovate with intent, right? You can innovate all you want, but if you don't know why you're innovating, if you don't have a purpose, if you don't understand the customer, if you don't understand the need, you'll have a cool product that nobody will use.
Yeah. Well, thank you for those kind words. I appreciate
Sure.
it. And I can identify the executive team that was in place when I was in my interview cycle was also a big reason I was so
Yeah.
interested in joining as well. Maybe let's look a bit to the future. What are the industry trends that you would place your biggest bets against to most shape the next 5 years of retail operations? And within that mix, I'm sure AI and automation are part of it. How do you see that changing the operating model for grocers holistically?
Yeah, so the biggest buzzword right now is AI, and it was
Mhm.
funny. I was recently in San Francisco and had got a chance to have dinner with Brad, and as we were driving around, I'm like, "My goodness, you guys have AI billboards on your buses, on your billboards,
Yes, we
on your
do.
buildings. You've got people with AI shirts on for scan a QR code." I'm like, so I don't have to speak to people in San Francisco about the reality that is AI. Um, what I'll say on AI though is, yes, AI is going to be transformative, but similar to the .com days, a lot of money is going into AI. People, the venture capital firms, private equity firms are spraying money all around. They know that probably 2 in 10 of those have a chance. They just don't know which 2 in 10. So
Yeah.
there's going to be a lot of AI that has material differences for whether it's the customer experience and really helping me understand my shopping list, helping me understand forget shopping list, help me understand my meal planning, help me understand my meal planning on a budget, help me understand what I can do with the ingredients I have and what's on special at what store to help me, uh, you know, uh, uh, provide nutrition to my family in a meaningful way. Um, then you've got the things that we've talked about, right? So agentic AI and where that's going, and what we buy as a merchant, right? Um, what are the trends? Where should we be buying? What should we be buying? There's the opportunity is large. I'd be crazy to sit here and tell you I know exactly what 5 years will look like with AI, but it will become a very predominant part of both the customer experience as well as the in-store, as
Mm-hmm.
well as the corporate administrative experience, especially within 5 years. So I expect AI to continue to grow exponentially and have very, very meaningful impact within customer, store, online, administrative type capabilities. Robotics, I think, is also another big one that will continue to grow, both robotics for in-store, but clearly delivery, right? Last mile
Mm-hmm.
delivery and what can be done there. Clearly picking operations. And, we see a lot of automated warehouses already. You got to have scale. A lot of them haven't done quite as well as they thought within the B2C space, but clearly like Amazon and those guys have done it well. But niche ones that have tried grocery only, it's been hard to get some of the economies of scale out of them. But it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, even
Right.
on broader use of robotics. So those are the two biggest themes. I still think, things like where will augmented reality and, glasses go for in-store experience, both for customers and teammates. I think that will continue to expand. As well as, again, smaller technology, more niche, but the ESLs and just in general,
Mm-hmm.
digital promotions, digital engagement, retail media is going to become even more and more prominent. It's a very large piece of, as an example, Walmart's profitability. Clearly, it's a big piece of Amazon's profitability. Most, if not all, small to medium-sized businesses within grocery are way under indexing on what they're making in that space. So, from a consumer engagement, from a CPG funding, those are going to be critical areas that people have to look at. And effectively, what that is that's the monetization of data.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably the other biggest trend is, and to do so in a way that is benefiting the consumer, not hurting them, right? You never want to lose the trust of the consumer. But that's a reality. And it's a reality that the large companies do, and they do it very, very well. And they do it very, very profitably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's safe to say that the boundaries between the store and the home will also start to dissolve. Some of the
Oh,
use cases you're
absolutely.
talking about, design me a menu that uses the items I have in my home, or like optimizes for nutrition for my family. In an agentified world where we have smart fridges and wearable devices that tell us all the data about our bodies and things, it's an exciting time to think about what's coming.
It is. It is.
So, last question, Bob. What advice would you give to our listeners who might be retail leaders as they think about, some of the trends you just talked about, and optimizing their businesses, particularly through the lens of digitizing the shelf?
Yeah, so I think the key for them is this is real, right? This is not, um, does this work? Is this going to work for me? Um, the technologies we're now talking about, especially the case here of Simbe and Tally. Schnucks has been in stores for well over 5 years through all stores. Rough time frame. I'm probably off on that a little bit, but close. And it's, as I said, it's not a matter of, it's a technology that's disconnected, right? So a couple things. The technology here is real. So you definitely need to be taking advantage of technologies that are proven and technologies that work. Don't underestimate the change management of it. Make sure you are leaning in. And actually, this can't be a technology project. It needs to be an operations or merchandising project enabled by your technology team. And there's a lot of opportunity as you look at Simbe, you look at what it can do, as we talked about the data, as you look at what it can do about your forecasting, your ability to improve your operation. All of it has to be, in my mind, um, part of a bigger plan that you have around creating a differentiated in-store. Um, and again, the thing you just commented on, Caitlin, with in-store and home and online are all going to morph. And I know I'm still talking about in-store because we're talking about a physical robot, but it's about creating a differentiated shopping experience, no matter
Yes.
how that consumer chooses to shop. Because Simbe would still be in that case, even if it's online through an Instacart, DoorDash, or whatever the future may hold. Um, Simbe will still be your eyes to what is available, what's on that shelf, what your store teammate needs to pull from the back, what you need to order um, in order to meet that commitment to the customer.
It's really well said. So don't underestimate the change management component. Think a lot about the people, and also think across teams within the organization, merchandising, store operations supported by IT. So a strong vision that scales over time and is supported across the different business unit owners.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's got to be driven by the business need, not by the fact that, oh, it's a technology that now works, right? If you Most projects initiated out of IT historically in any company fail,
Mm.
uh, because if you don't have the business sponsorship, you're not going to get anywhere. So make sure you've got the champions on the business side of the house, driving the need versus the IT side driving the capability.
Well, thank you, Bob. Thank you for taking the time today and for taking us down memory lane a little bit. Thank you as well for everything, not just that you've done for our company, but for our industry and showing us the art of the possible. And I mean, it's extremely unusual to be able to lead on the cutting edge of innovation for as long as you have. And so I find it very inspiring to interact with you every time I have the opportunity. And today has been no exception.
I was fortunate to have a great team and to work for a great company that gave us that possibility.
Well, on that note, thank you everyone for calling in and have a wonderful rest of your day. We appreciate your time.
Thank you all.